Suffering is not born from what happens to you, but from how you react to it and resist it. If you truly wish to escape the vicious circle of emotional pain, the first thing you must understand is a harsh truth that is often forgotten. Pain does not come from the event itself, but from your inability to accept it. Most people spend their whole lives in a state of inner turmoil, endlessly replaying the same old wound without realizing they are the ones fueling their own suffering. Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, condensed this into a weighty saying: "What you resist will persist." This is not just a pretty line, but a profound psychological and spiritual truth that can completely transform your life if you truly understand it and live by it. Consider when something painful happens. You lose your job, a relationship breaks, you are betrayed, or you meet a major failure. Emotional reactions like sadness, anger, disappointment, fear, or confusion are deeply human. But what plunges you into suffering is not the event itself. It is the inner confrontation with the very reality unfolding now. It is the voice that keeps echoing in your mind. This should not have happened. It's so unfair. I can't bear it. That very resistance, that refusal to accept what is, turns simple pain into prolonged inner torment. That is the real source of suffering. The human mind is programmed to seek control. We want everything our way. We want to avoid discomfort. We want a stable and predictable life. But in reality, life follows no personal script. It moves to the rhythm of the universe. And when life does not go according to the scenario we wrote, our first reflex is to resist. We rebel in the mind, we deny, we blame, we complain. Why me? In that very moment, suffering begins to take root. Take a breakup as an example. The sense of loss is natural and reasonable. It may last weeks, even months, but pain that drags on for years, the exhausting torment, that is not because of the breakup, but because you cannot let go. Because you keep replaying the memories in your mind, clinging to the belief that things should have been different. It is not the loss that destroys you. It is your refusal to accept its reality. The same happens with betrayal, failure, or any loss. It is the mental opposition, the ceaseless struggle against what is already done that brings you to your knees. So how do you get out of that spiral? The answer lies in a spiritual principle that can completely change your life if you truly embrace it: radical acceptance. And understand clearly, acceptance is not surrender, not approval, and it does not deny pain. Acceptance means you stop pouring energy into a hopeless war with reality. You stop wrestling with what cannot be changed and begin to direct that energy into the only thing you truly command: your response. And when you truly accept what has happened, not with words, but with a quiet heart, something miraculous begins to unfold. The burden seems lighter not because the pain suddenly disappears, but because you have stopped feeding it with resistance. You no longer give the pain fuel through inner protest, through regret, anger, or the craving to control what cannot be controlled. Imagine someone who has just been fired. If they keep holding on to a sense of unfairness, blame, and self-pity, they will remain stuck in that wound for years, carrying it into every job and relationship afterward like a nameless ghost. But if they choose to let go, to face reality and ask, "What will I do next with this?" In that very moment, they begin to reclaim authorship of their life. They stop living in reaction and start living with purpose. Pain is no longer a chain, but becomes a catalyst for growth. That is the crux, not circumstance, but perspective. Carl Jung emphasized that integrating every experience, even the most painful, is an essential step in inner development. For pain, when seen and held, ceases to be an enemy. It becomes a teacher. One of the most common and dangerous mistakes we all make is believing our pain is special, deeper, and more complex than anyone else's. But the truth is that pain is an inseparable part of the human experience. Everyone has been hurt. The difference does not lie in the degree of suffering, but in how one faces it. Those who resist suffer endlessly. Those who accept grow day by day. If you truly want to heal, if you truly long for freedom, the first step is not to change life, but to stop fighting it. Accept what has happened. Accept what you cannot control. Accept the truth as it is. And from there, redirect all your inner energy toward creating what you can change. And here is something few ever say plainly. The most shocking truth about your suffering is that most of it does not come from what happened, but from the fact that you cling to it for too long. A broken relationship does not make you ache for years. The refusal to let go is what keeps your heart from mending. Someone's betrayal does not hold you in the past. It is the resentment you feed every day. Missing an opportunity does not keep you stuck. The obsession with what might have been locks you in regret. When you release resistance, when you stop trying to change what is already done, suffering begins to crack. That does not mean the pain vanishes overnight, but it will no longer control you. Over time, it becomes a precious lesson rather than a deepening burden. Now we come to the deepest part, the part most people never consider. It is your unconscious mind that keeps you in suffering. Once you understand that suffering springs from resistance, the next question is, if I know this, why do I still not get free? Why do I keep repeating the same emotional patterns again and again? At that very point, the door to true liberation begins to open. For when you discover the answer behind that question, you realize a powerful truth. You have more authorship over your life than you ever imagined. And that is when everything begins to change. So do not look away. In the next part, we step into a deeper awareness where truth begins to reveal itself. Your mind has been unconsciously programmed to keep you in suffering. More importantly, you can begin to unravel that pattern today to free yourself once and for all. First, face a hard truth. Your unconscious mind is programmed to recreate pain over and over. If you have ever felt that suffering always finds you, that your life is haunted by misfortune, then it is time to awaken to a truth few dare to say. You are repeating your own pain without knowing it. Not because you want to suffer, but because a part of you, one you have never seen, quietly pulls you back into the same old whirlpool of emotions. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is not merely philosophical. It is a profound truth about how the mind works. What you call fate is simply an old script repeating, written in childhood and stored in the deepest layers of the psyche. Each time you meet hurt, rejection, failure, or the feeling of being unloved, it is not necessarily because life is unfair, but because within you, the familiar is being unconsciously reenacted. The unconscious mind is like software written when you were small. If you grew up where love was always tied to hurt, where your feelings were not respected, where safety was fragile, those experiences became the ground of today's beliefs, reflexes, and emotions. You did not choose them. They were etched in quietly and persistently. And now they govern much of your life without your awareness. No one ever told you this. The unconscious does not care about your happiness. IT is loyal to what is familiar. Therefore, no matter how much your conscious mind wishes to let go of suffering, another part within you still seeks the same kinds of people, the same familiar situations, the same repeated emotional endings. That is not random. That is a pattern, born of the past and operating like an invisible trap in the present. Be honest with yourself. Do you often fall into relationships that wound you? Does something make happiness or success slip away just as you touch it? Have you promised yourself this time will be different, only to end up right where you began? That is not bad luck. That is the unconscious replaying what it knows best. It is a quiet, repeated self-sabotage. Why do we cling to what hurts us? The answer is not in reason, but in the emotional history of childhood. If you learn that love comes with hurt, then as an adult, you will unconsciously seek the kind of bonds that feel familiar, not because you want suffering, but because to your nervous system, the familiar equals safe, even when it breaks you. If as a child you were ignored, shamed, or rejected, today you may unconsciously avoid new opportunities, healthy relationships, and even your own dreams, because somewhere inside you still fear that trying again means hurting again. You choose to stay in a safe zone that is, in truth, a cage wrapped in old fear. And here is the saddest thing. If you do not recognize these patterns, you will repeat them for life and mistake them for destiny. You will keep asking, why do I always love the wrong person? Why is my life always stuck? Why does everything always go off track? And you will not know that your unconscious is writing the script episode by episode until you are brave enough to stop, step out, and write yourself anew. The truth is that life is not a war against you, not fate or the universe trying to make you fail. In reality, you are recreating a script formed long ago in your unconscious, a script you were unaware of. So how do you break this unconscious cycle to escape chronic suffering? The answer is simple. You cannot change what you cannot see. If you truly want to end the cycle of emotional pain, the first step is to recognize the unconscious pattern you are living. Bring it to light and ask yourself questions that are truly deep and honest. What is the dominant feeling in my life? Rejection, abandonment, betrayal, disappointment, or fear? What kind of relationships do I attract? And what story am I telling about myself and the world? When you answer these questions sincerely, you will recognize something miraculous. The pain you endure is not simply caused by the outer world. You are projecting it and living inside it without realizing it. That is the moment change begins. Breaking this cycle does not mean you will never feel sad, angry, or disappointed again. Those emotions are part of being human. It does mean you will no longer be a victim of an unconscious pattern steering you without your knowledge. The moment you recognize the pattern, you are no longer its slave. You cannot avoid all pain in life, but you can stop recycling it, maintaining it, and choosing it unconsciously. From that moment, you begin to own your choices instead of reacting on autopilot. And in the next part, we will explore how the ego plays a major role in keeping you trapped in suffering and how to undo its power to reclaim authorship of your life. The ego feeds on your suffering. It keeps pain alive so it can stay alive. If you truly commit to breaking the emotional patterns that wound you, understand that the ego is the biggest obstacle on your path to healing. The ego convinces you that you are fully justified in your pain, that the world is unfair, that others must change before you can be happy. It tells stories like, I am always the victim, or nothing in my life ever goes right. But the truth is, the ego does not want you to heal. If you let go of pain, the ego loses its identity because it lives on conflict, blame, and separation. The ego creates drama to survive, persuading you that your pain proves you are right, that you have every reason to hold on to resentment and cling to old wounds. When you begin to see the ego as a defense mechanism, a mask, a survival strategy, you gradually neutralize it. You step into a deeper version of yourself, one that no longer needs pain to exist, that does not need to reenact the past to feel safe. The truth is, healing is not becoming someone else. AT is remembering who you were before the world told you who you had to be. Carl Jung said, the mind creates the problem, but that same mind cannot solve it. This contains a profound truth. The very part of you that creates emotional pain cannot heal it, and that part is the ego. The ego is not only a voice in your head, it is the filter through which you view everything. Sadly, it is also what creates the pain in the first place. When you try to heal from within the ego, you only reinforce the very suffering you are trying to escape. So how does the ego sabotage your emotional healing? It is cunning. It does not say, I want you to suffer. Instead, it whispers persuasive reasons to keep the pain. It repeats what happened to you. You were betrayed. Life is unfair. They abandoned you. Those memories loop in your mind like a film, making you believe that thinking about them gives you some kind of power. In truth, all it does is keep you stuck in the loop of suffering, stuck in an emotional prison the ego itself has built. One of the most dangerous tricks of the ego is to make you identify with your pain. It convinces you that the pain is you. You begin to define yourself through past wounds and from there form a personal story. I'm always betrayed. People always leave me. This always happens to me. Every time you say those words, every time you think that way, you carve that identity deeper into your subconscious. You become unconsciously loyal to your pain. The ego will also try to convince you that the solution lies outside you. It says your pain is caused by others, that life owes you something, that your circumstances must change before you can feel okay again. That is the perfect trap. If the solution is always outside, you never have to take responsibility for your own healing. You remain in a perpetual waiting state, waiting for an apology, for fairness, for someone to come save you. But while you wait, you cannot move forward. You cannot grow. You are stuck. The ego lives on conflict, comparison, and wounds that never heal because it keeps scratching them until they bleed again. It thrives when you stay immersed in what went wrong. It keeps you in a loop of self-pity, resentment, and blame. It makes you believe you are powerless. That is when the victim trap begins. When you fall into victimhood, you start believing everything bad that happens is due to others, bad luck, or fate. While that may feel like self-protection through blaming the outside world, in truth, you are giving up your power. If you believe you have no control over your life, you will never take the steps needed to change it. And that is exactly what the ego wants, to keep you small, defenseless, and in pain. The most brutal truth is that no one is coming to save you. No matter how much you cry, how often you blame, how long you complain, no one will come to set you free. The only one who can break this cycle is you. So how do you dissolve the ego and take back control of your life? The first and most important step is to recognize that you are not the ego, not your pain, not your past, and certainly not the voice in your head that keeps whispering you will always be a victim. The ego wants you to cling to pain because that is how it survives. But the moment you stop feeding it, the ego begins to lose its power and grow weak. And in that very moment, something miraculous happens. You begin to awaken. There are 3 powerful ways to start breaking the ego's control over your life. First, observe the voice in your head. When the ego begins replaying wounds, when it says life is unfair, stop. Do not react. Simply observe that voice as an objective witness. Recognize that the voice is not you. It is a mental program, an unconscious pattern, a recording playing on loop. The more you observe without identifying, the more that voice loses power. Second, stop feeding the pain story. Every time you retell how you were wronged, every time you share your pain with whoever will listen, you reinforce the wound and give it more strength. Ask yourself, does this story empower me or does it weaken me? If it weakens you, let it go. Stop rehearsing your pain because each rehearsal only makes it grow. Third, do the opposite of what the ego wants. The ego wants you to react with anger, hold grudges, and stay mad. But when you respond with calm, detachment, and acceptance, you neutralize the ego and reclaim your power. As soon as you recognize the ego for what it is, its control begins to collapse. You no longer feel the need to hold on to pain, to seek validation from the outside, or to identify as a victim of circumstance. In that clarity, you see a powerful truth. Suffering is not what happened to you. It is the story the ego spins around the pain that keeps you stuck. Pain does not vanish by fighting it. It begins to dissolve when you embrace it in an entirely different way. This is the lesson few teach us. From childhood, we were taught to avoid pain at all costs. Don't cry. Be strong. Don't show weakness. We learn to suppress it, deny it, and run from it. But the truth is, what you resist persists. Repressed pain does not disappear. It buries itself in your mind, body, and behavior, becoming anxiety, sudden anger, and emotional numbness. The more you refuse to feel it, the deeper it roots into your unconscious. Carl Jung understood this more than anyone when he said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You cannot heal by ignoring your pain. You must face it honestly and without resistance. Think of pain as a force. When you push against it, it pushes back. That is why when you try to flee emotions like sadness, grief, or anger, they grow stronger. You tell yourself not to cry, not to feel, not to break. You distract yourself with work, social media, or anything that keeps you from facing yourself. But when you are alone, when all the outer noise stops, the pain returns even more fiercely. You blame others in life, telling yourself they caused your pain. But as long as you keep projecting pain outward, you will never look inward, where true healing begins. The truth is, pain does not destroy us. Resistance to pain makes it unbearable. Next, so what is the key to breaking this cycle? Accept the pain. Do not run. Allow yourself to feel fully, consciously, without judgment. If you are sad, cry. If you are angry, sit with the anger. Do not act impulsively, but do not deny it either. Begin by observing your feelings. Witness them. Feel them move through your body. Then the miracle begins. When you stop resisting pain and start receiving it as a natural part of being human, it loses its grip. The monster in your mind begins to shrink. And here is the most wonderful truth. Nothing is permanent. Every emotion, no matter how intense, is temporary. Every wave of suffering will pass if you let it pass. But when you resist, when you keep prolonging the story of pain, you only extend the suffering beyond what is necessary. Healing does not happen in the future. It happens only in the present. In the moment you decide to stop running from yourself and start embracing all that you are, wounds included. That is when true transformation begins. Jung spoke profoundly about the importance of inner transformation. One of the core truths of that path is understanding impermanence. Nothing is permanent, neither joy nor pain. Everything is always moving. Like pleasure, pain is temporary. It does not define you, and it does not last forever. Recall the last time you went through a hard period. You may have felt trapped in a never-ending storm, hopeless and exhausted, as if you would never get out. But somehow you did. Now you are here, wiser, more experienced, with a new perspective. You made it through, and the same will happen with whatever pain you are facing now. This will pass. The storm will quiet, and the sun will rise again. So how do we begin to accept pain thoroughly instead of letting it drown us? How do we stop being slaves to our own suffering? There are steps you can start practicing right now. Powerful tools to reclaim your freedom, your feelings, and your inner strength. First, do not judge your pain. Do not label it. Do not overanalyze. Do not ask, why do I feel this way? Or when will this end? Instead, simply allow yourself to feel it, without resistance, without shame, without adding any story. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply an experience moving through you. That's all. Second, observe it in your body. When you feel anxious, angry, sad, or despairing, do not let the mind create scenarios about defeat or about how broken you are. Bring your attention back to the body. Ask, where do I feel this in my body? How does it show up physically? Perhaps a heavy chest, a lump in the throat, trembling hands, or a knot in the stomach. Simply notice it, watch it without trying to fix or fight it. Third, breathe through it. Instead of clenching your jaw, tightening your fists, or trying to distract yourself, try this. Take a deep breath, then another. Let breath move through the feeling. You do not have to make the pain disappear. Your only task is to be present with what is, fully. And when you do this, a miracle happens. When you stop resisting pain and meet it with awareness, you realize it has no power over you. The pain may still be there, but its grip begins to loosen. You are no longer a victim. You become someone who can walk through pain with strength, maturity, and calm. That is your real power, not in control, not in resistance, but in acceptance. Most people spend their lives running from pain. They distract themselves, avoid discomfort, hide in addictions, in work, in denial. But the only true way to free yourself from suffering is to face it directly, with consciousness and an open heart. When you do, when you stop fighting and allow yourself to truly feel, something miraculous happens. You discover that pain was never your enemy. Suffering does not come to destroy you. It comes to awaken you, shape you, transform you. Once you understand this, fear begins to dissolve. So let us go deeper, because when you stop resisting pain, you can use it not only to heal, but to evolve in ways you never imagined. This is where true transformation begins. You can turn your pain into power. This is the inner alchemy of healing. By now, you understand that resisting pain only makes it stronger, avoiding it only deepens the wound, and accepting it is the first step toward freedom. But there is something even more extraordinary you can do. You can turn your pain into your greatest source of strength. Carl Jung understood this more than anyone. He spoke of the ancient art of alchemy not as turning lead into gold literally, but as a psychological and spiritual journey. The real alchemy happens within us. The lead is our pain, our deep wounds, our fears, our traumas. The gold is who we become when we embrace the pain and let it temper us. Wisdom, strength, maturity, compassion. These are the gifts that lie on the far side of suffering. So the question is not, how do I avoid suffering? But how can I use my pain to become stronger, wiser, freer? This is the latent power of pain. It is a call to awaken. Think of the strongest people you have known, people with depth, insight, and a quiet courage that emanates from their presence. They did not become that way because life was easy. They did not become who they are by avoiding hardship. No, they went through fire. They were broken, and on the other side, they were reborn. Every experience of pain is a crossroads, a sacred invitation. You can let it close you or open you. You can let it define you or refine you. It is a choice. Stop being the old self and become a completely new version, more awake, more resilient, more deeply connected to life. Carl Jung spoke of the dark night of the soul, a stage in which one faces one's deepest suffering. It is a time of emotional and spiritual upheaval, when you feel as if the foundations of your life are collapsing, as if you have reached your limit, and the weight of life is too much to bear. Pain becomes overwhelming, suffocating. But Jung did not describe this as punishment. He saw it as a sacred opportunity, an invitation to transformation, a test not of your strength, but of your willingness to evolve. In the very moments when everything seems lost, when you think you cannot go on, you stand on the brink of the greatest breakthrough of your life. Now imagine that instead of resisting this darkness, you pause and ask, what is this trying to teach me? How can I use this pain to rise instead of collapse? In that moment, something powerful happens. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You become the alchemist of your own life. You begin to turn destruction into rebirth. From the ashes, a new version of you is forged, stronger, wiser, more connected to your true self. Every time you experience loss, betrayal, heartbreak, or deep disappointment, a part of you dies. But what most people do not realize is that this death is necessary. The death of illusions, the end of false expectations, the collapse of egos that no longer serve your growth. And always following each death is a chance for rebirth, a sacred invitation to rebuild yourself from a deeper, more truthful place. If you take a moment to look back on your life, you will see that the experiences that shaped you most were not the happy moments, but the struggles. The times you were pushed to the edge and somehow found the strength to go on. That is the nature of transformation. In its purest form, pain shatters you. It breaks the beliefs you once held about yourself, the world, and others. It forces you to look straight into the mirror and face everything you had avoided, the shadows, the wounds, the parts of you you were too afraid to see. And within that confrontation lies a gift, the chance to choose, stay stuck, or enter the process of evolution. Let pain define you or let it temper you. So how do you turn suffering into strength? How do you transform pain into purpose? By now, you have realized that resisting pain only strengthens it, avoiding it only deepens the wound, and accepting it is the first step toward freedom. But there is something even more extraordinary. You can turn your pain into your greatest source of power. Jung understood this more than anyone. He spoke of the ancient art of alchemy, not the literal turning of lead into gold, but the psychological and spiritual journey. The real alchemy happens within us. The lead is our pain, our deep wounds, our fears, and our traumas. The gold is the person we become when we embrace the pain and let it temper us. Wisdom, strength, maturity, and compassion are the gifts on the far side of suffering. So the question is not how to avoid suffering, but how to use it to become stronger, wiser, and freer. Pain is latent power, a call for you to awaken. Think of the strongest people you know, those with depth, insight, and a quiet courage in their presence. They did not become that way because life was easy. They did not become such people by avoiding hardship. No, they went through fire, were broken, and on the other side were reborn. Every encounter with pain is a crossroads, a sacred invitation. You can let it close you or let it open you. You can let it define you or let it refine you. That is your choice. Stop being the old self and become a completely new version, more awake, more resilient, more deeply connected to life. Jung spoke of the dark night of the soul, a stage when one faces the deepest suffering. It is a period of intense emotional and spiritual turmoil when you feel the very ground of your life collapsing. You feel you have reached the limit, as if the burden of life is unbearable. The pain becomes overwhelming, suffocating. But Jung did not see this moment as punishment. He saw it as a sacred opportunity, an invitation to transformation, a test not of your strength, but of your willingness to evolve. In those times when everything seems lost, when you think you cannot continue, you stand at the edge of your greatest breakthrough. Now imagine that instead of resisting this darkness, you pause and ask, what is this trying to teach me? How can I use this pain to rise instead of collapse? In that moment, something powerful happens. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You become the alchemist of your life. You transform destruction into rebirth. From the ashes, a new you is forged, stronger, wiser, more aligned with who you truly are. Each time you endure loss, betrayal, heartbreak, or deep disappointment, something in you dies. But what most people do not see is that such a death is necessary. The death of illusions, the end of false expectations, the fall of egos that no longer serve your growth. What always follows each death is an opportunity for rebirth, a sacred invitation to rebuild yourself from a deeper, truer place. If you look back over your life, you will recognize that what most shaped you were not the happy moments, but the struggles, the times you were driven to the edge and somehow found the strength to keep going. That is the essence of transformation. In its pure form, pain breaks you apart. It shatters beliefs you once held about yourself, the world, and others. It forces you to face everything you avoided, the shadows, the wounds, the parts you feared to see. And within that encounter lies a gift, the chance to choose. Keep being stuck or step into evolution. Let pain define you or let it temper you. When you begin to see pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher, you not only pass through it, you allow it to shape and forge you. That is the alchemy Jung pointed to. From wounds, fear, and suffering, you can forge yourself into a version that is stronger, wiser, and more connected to your own being. Every challenge you face is not punishment. It is a chance to grow and evolve. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, but the creator of your life. Use pain as a springboard to greatness. Remember, Pain is not something you must flee. It is an opportunity to awaken and to learn. When you truly face it and let it temper you, you realize that nothing in life can break you unless you allow it. You become invincible, not through avoidance or outer force, but because you have learned to accept and transmute pain into inexhaustible strength. Therefore, when life brings you trials, do not be afraid. Look pain in the eye and ask, what is this teaching me? How can I use this pain to become stronger and wiser? Each time you do that, you find you are no longer controlled by pain. You are the one who authors your destiny. Thank you for taking the time to read and reflect on this journey. Do not forget, every step, even in darkness, leads you toward a new light. Keep moving forward, trust yourself, and remember you always have the power to choose the path of transformation. May you be strong, wise, and never give up on the journey of becoming the best version of yourself.